Random House Audible presents World War 3.0, Microsoft and Its Enemies by Ken Auletta. Bill Gates was angry when he arrived at the annual meeting of the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland in January 1998. His anger was palpable, and it surprised many who did not know him, but knew well the multiple reasons he had not to be angry. The planet's richest man was the co-founder of Microsoft, a company that for 23 years had outflanked and outthought its competitors, a company whose Windows software now served as the essential code in about 90% of all personal computers, a company whose stock price made it the world's most highly valued. Besides, unlike stock market meteors such as Amazon.com and Broadcast.com that produced paper billionaires but globs of red ink, Microsoft enjoyed an astonishing profit margin of 40 cents on each revenue dollar in this year. Its profits, nearly $4.5 billion, were about twice as large as those of the world's largest company, General Motors. And its pockets then bulged with an even more astonishing $15 billion or so of excess cash. What's more, Bill Gates had come to look forward to this annual summit of about 2,000 CEOs and government, academic, and media leaders who came to this tiny alpine village for 3 to 5 days, dipping into seminars on topics from genetic engineering to Islam, listening to and giving speeches, maybe skiing, and, of course, scheduling one-on-one business meetings, all under the protective eye of the machine-gun-toting Swiss Army. Of the many conferences Bill Gates attended, this one afforded the most unusual perspective, for entrepreneurs and tyrants, most in shirt sleeves, came together from all corners of the earth. Presidents, prime ministers, foreign ministers, the CEOs of the Fortune 500, as well as those of the newer dot-coms, all made the pilgrimage, and no one was a bigger rock star here than Bill Gates. For the past several years, the coveted Sunday luncheon speech before the international press was reserved for Bill Gates. Heads of state lined up to hear what he had to say about the new economy, and in private exchanges sought to encourage him to open a Microsoft facility in their country. Gates enjoyed the attention, and he enjoyed the efficiency of Davos even more. At Microsoft, he carefully budgeted his time, allocating a set number of annual FaceTime hours to each senior executive and 5 speeches per year to software developers. For a busy executive, Davos was like one-stop shopping. In just a few days, Gates could assemble and speak with hundreds of his biggest customers, prearrange appointments to discuss deals, stack up private sessions with CEOs or government chiefs, and gather in one room editors and correspondents from the world's most prestigious publications. Yet whatever reasons Bill Gates might have had to be ebullient going into Davos were overwhelmed by his burgeoning sense that he was a victim. He believed Microsoft was the engine of the new economy. So why, he wondered, was the U.S. government treating him like Al Capone? Software wasn't oil, he insisted, and he was no John D. Rockefeller. Yet the Justice Department said that he, too, had violated antitrust laws. As Gates moved about the conference center and hotel lobbies, his public relations handlers surrounded him as if he were a heavyweight champion making his way to the ring. But they were not protecting Gates from his adoring fans. They were protecting him from himself. At the Sunday lunch for about 100 reporters and editors, I was seated next to Gates at a table for 10. That included his wife Melinda, several editors, and the chairman and CEO of Coca-Cola, M. Douglas Ivester. Bill Gates has never been partial to small talk, and this occasion was no exception. Before the salad arrived, he had already berated me for a panel I'd moderated a few nights earlier called Monopolies in Technology. He complained that I had allowed enemies of Microsoft to pummel his chief technology officer, Nathan Myhrvold. Gates sat huddled over, his arms folded across his chest, his brown hair unparted, unwashed, and combed straight down like a boy's. His manner was gruff, and he was either unwilling or unable to hide his rage. Melinda Gates, a personable former Microsoft executive, tried discreetly to capture his attention, but he would not look up. The 8 other guests at the table stared at him in wonder. Suddenly, his voice rising to a shrill pitch, Gates proclaimed, "Neither Nathan nor anyone from Microsoft will ever appear again on such a panel." The lunch continued in silence. Bill Gates did have ample reason to feel besieged. The federal government had placed his company in its crosshairs as early as 1990, beginning with what at first seemed to be a routine Federal Trade Commission investigation, which ballooned into a Justice Department probe, abated when both sides signed a consent decree in 1994, and then ballooned again in 1997 into one of the largest civil antitrust investigations in U.S. history. Gates took the government threat less seriously than he did his corporate foes, among which he felt particularly besieged by Netscape Communications, which in 1994 released its Navigator browser, providing an easy on-ramp to the World Wide Web and gaining a Microsoft-like 80% market share seemingly overnight. Perhaps more disturbing to Gates the seer was that he hadn't sensed it coming. Off in their own little world outside Seattle, where employees communicated with one another by an internal email system and took most meals in the cafeteria, and had relatively little contact with customers or rivals, Microsoft's visionaries did not hear the Internet buzz in Silicon Valley or on college campuses. Gates reacted to Internet enthusiasts much as he had to software pirates 2 decades previously. He thought they were a bunch of woolly-headed flower children with not a clue as to how to make money. Even in early 1995, Gates still believed that private corporate networks or intranets, as well as proprietary online services such as MSN or interactive television, would dwarf the overhyped World Wide Web. In his first book, The Road Ahead, which claimed to offer Gates's vision of the future, he downplayed the Internet. In the spring of 1995, Gates got religion and suddenly shifted the company's direction. In May, he sent the now famous memorandum to his senior staff, called the Internet Tidal Wave, acknowledging that his view of the Internet had changed, that in fact, the Internet is the most important single development to come along since the IBM PC was introduced in 1981. And on Pearl Harbor Day, December 7, 1995, realizing that Microsoft's dominion was threatened by the development of the Internet and the 20 million consumers who surfed it daily, Gates announced that from then on Microsoft would be Internet-centric, that its every product would be redesigned with the Internet in mind. They would produce a browser, and it would be given away free, and it would be included as part of their current operating system, Windows 95. No longer would MSN be a proprietary network. It would be an Internet portal open to all. In a conversion like those felt in offices across America in the late 90s, Gates got the Internet, and the way it might diminish the importance of the Windows operating system. As long as Windows controlled about 90% of all PCs, software developers needed to write their new applications so they worked on Windows, and as a result, rival operating systems were impeded. Software developers needed from Microsoft the Windows Application Programming Interfaces, or APIs. These secret codes are like the hooks on an aircraft carrier that grab descending jets, and independent software developers needed these secret codes to land their applications on Windows. Together, these technical and economic barriers were sometimes referred to as the application's barrier to entry. But if a simple browser could sit atop Windows or any other operating system, employing a universal language code such as Java, and if developers could hook onto the APIs of the browser, then the vital software on a PC might no longer be Windows, but the browser. This browser software would be an alternative platform that software developers would have powerful incentives to write applications for. Why write a program that ran only on Windows when you could write one that could run on all operating systems? This was the so-called middleware threat to which Bill Gates had awakened. In its war with Netscape, Microsoft had 2 weapons Netscape could not match: the ubiquitous Windows and deep pockets. Microsoft would integrate its own browser with Windows and give it away for free. Microsoft was aroused. The company held rallies on the grass of its corporate campus, at which Executive Vice President of Sales and Service Steve Ballmer pumped up employees by leading them in a war whoop and screaming for the blood of competitors, screaming for victory. To Microsoft, such enthusiasm expressed its passion to excel. To others, it reeked of 19th-century robber barons.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?